So welcome to the next in our series of interviews and conversations on cybersecurity career trends. What we're trying to do here is every week have another expert on the show to help students and listeners figure out how can they make use of their education or knowledge that they already have with a career change. And many people in this field are not currently in the security field. They're in another information technology or another part of business. They're trying to transition into the security field. And that's what our topic today is going to be about. And I'm very happy that we have a special guest, John Bao, who is the Director of Career Development right here at Quinnipiac School of Engineering. So good morning and welcome, John.
Hey, good morning, Fred. Thanks for having me on your webcast.
Thank you. And we have a really exciting topic, which is how do you make a career change? You're working in a particular business. You may have been working there for a number of years. You're interested in information security, which is a hot opportunity. You know there are great careers there. How do you make that transition? So let me, before I get into that specific question, let me just go through John's background. As I said, he is the Director of Career Development here at Quinnipiac. He's been working with individuals at crossroads in their personal development for his entire career. He started out in recruiting first as a college admissions officer, and then he also worked on the corporate side as a recruiter in engineering and biotechnology. He's also been active as a career coach since 2003, joining the Office of Career Strategy at Yale University. He led STEM advising efforts there and was later hired by UConn as their first ever dedicated career consultant for their School of Engineering. Of course, we're very happy he's here at Quinnipiac. John joined Quinnipiac in January after a stint back at Yale, where he coached full-time and executive MBA students in the Yale School of Management. He's enjoying his new opportunity to help build out a career development program here at Quinnipiac. So he's working with our undergraduate students and our graduate students to help them find the right kind of career pathways in the 21st century. So let's go back to the question that I talked about is you're studying cybersecurity or you're interested in cybersecurity, you have already a significant business career, you're in a particular company. What are the steps you need to do to get into a role in cybersecurity in that same company without having to go find a new position? How do you attack that, John?
So the challenges of the mid-career professional are significantly different than your typical sort of 21 or 22-year-old new college graduate. We're looking at folks who are already employed, who are quite possibly in an organization where they feel strongly about their employer. They like being there. They become comfortable with the way of doing business. They feel good about it, but they're seeking that next step. As you're mentioning, the field of cybersecurity is growing and will continue to grow into the foreseeable future. So then, from the employer side, the cost for an employer to transition somebody inside the company is much less. So, the folks watching this are already at a little bit of a competitive advantage, even if they aren't quite prepared for that cybersecurity role. In order to help get prepared for that role, the first step is to make sure they fully understand what their employer would be seeking in that kind of job. It sounds simple, but go to your company's website, look through the current job postings, and you can even set up an alarm as if you were an external candidate so that use a private email address and search that site and see what the cybersecurity jobs look like. What are the requirements, both in terms of education and knowledge. Oftentimes in these IT-related fields, employers are perhaps more pragmatic. They want to know what do you know how to do so that if there are certain skill sets, either using platforms or specific pieces of hardware or software, you have a target. You know where you have that knowledge and skills gap. If not in your own company, just look out there on a large publicly available website like Indeed.com and read cybersecurity job descriptions. Get familiar with the language that's being used so you know, what do I have to bring to the table to really be considered for one of these roles?
So great. So you've got the skills, or you've figured out what skills you need. You've gone out to acquire them or take steps to acquire them. So what's next?
So, well, of course, we all hope that students take a look at your program,
Yeah.
Brad, and think about coming to Quinnipiac. But wherever they're gaining these skills, simply having the skills isn't quite enough. They've got to be able to communicate their ability to do these jobs. So, becoming sort of indispensable at work with whatever skill set you currently have, work collaboratively in your organization as best you can, whether it's projects-based, serving some other teams, or think about your own informal network. If you've done a good job at work, if you've worked with other people in other departments or other work areas, you're going to build a reputation internally. And all of this just sort of comes through the natural course of being a strong employee. Something you can do that's a little outside the day-to-day is to take a page out of the book Never Eat Alone. A guy named Keith Ferrazzi, who was one of the youngest chief marketing officers in the Fortune 500 ever, published a book in 2005 called Never Eat Alone. The basic idea was that you can build your career through personal relationships. I know when you're working within information technology related fields, there is often a desire to be pragmatic, to find the efficient solution, to go online and click and apply and kind of hope that it all works out just like Amazon Prime. But, in the very messy world of humans and getting a look from a hiring manager, not everything can be had at arm's length. Whenever possible, find out inside your own organization, who are the people that have the jobs that you want, or who are the supervisors in those groups, and get to know them. Ask for, just an informational meeting. In the career world, we call these informational interviews. And it sounds very daunting, very formal, but it can be as simple as sending an email to a colleague and saying, dear Susan, I'm really interested in the work that your group does. As I'm thinking about where I might want to take my career path, I was wondering if you could set aside a few minutes to grab a cup of coffee next week. I'd love to learn more about your department. Something that simple, just sort of asking one human a question from another human can really help to inform you about what the opportunities are and show a potential supervisor that you are interested. That demonstration of direct interest in a specific role is helpful. I watch folks all the time, think about, how did you get your job? Or even in relationships, how did you end up dating that particular person? And often the answer is, hey, they reached out to me. I found out they liked me first. In that way, employers are not unlike, interpersonal relationships. We like those who show an interest in us.
Right.
It's really helpful, kind of put yourself out there a little bit.
Let me ask sort of a follow-up on that is, if I'm hearing you, this is kind of a, you're looking for intelligence that's going on in the organization. Are there any issues with sort of you're in one specific department, not the security department, and then you're out kind of networking, looking for intelligence? Do you have to, would you tell your current supervisor you're doing that? Would you just do it on your own? Would it depend on the situation? How would you handle your existing role in the company?
Well, first and foremost, if you are inside a company now, you owe them your work. So you have to attend to your current roles and responsibilities.
Yep.
You can't be seen as somebody who's just a climber, just a user, trying to get their way up. So the best way to make a move inside a company is to first demonstrate your very strong value to the organization overall. So don't let up on your day-to-day. But people take breaks for lunchtime. You might be able to meet briefly after work. But that sort of offer of, hey, do you have a few minutes for a short chat? Would you like to grab a cup of coffee? Something very straightforward like that can be a good way to get at it. But, first do your job.
Okay.
That's always a good thing to say.
Good. So That's very good advice, right? You're not going to make any lateral move unless you have a record of excelling at what you were doing in the first place. So that's outstanding. So once you've done those two steps, what would be the third step to potentially make a move or look more seriously at a move into security, let's say?
So once you've begun to accumulate and master some of the skills that you think are going to be important for that next step, don't be afraid to reach out to your human resources office. I know that sometimes when you're at your workplace, people look at human resources as forms, people who are going to tell you, no, you can't do that. And the truth is that, having worked internally in HR as a recruiter, the human resources office wants to make the company work well. They may not do your company's primary mission, but their goal is to support all the people inside the organization so that they can do their jobs. As I mentioned when we started, the cost of a new hire to a company is very high. They have to advertise positions, they have to bring candidates in to interview, they have to pay for those advertisements, and it's not just monetarily, but also in terms of in terms of time. That it takes a great deal to get somebody on board, to make sure they're a cultural fit, to get everything in line with all their employment, their paperwork, their verifications, and all those things we think about it. So that if you were to approach either an HR generalist or somebody in talent acquisition, recruiting, even if it's just your payroll person, because that's the person you know, reach out to someone in human resources where there's an existing relationship, and then ask to speak to an HR generalist, or some firms will have folks that they call talent acquisition or the recruiters, but then there's also talent development, people whose role it is within larger companies maybe to help develop the folks who are already inside. But set up a time to meet with them and have a heart-to-heart. Let them know, hey, I like working here, but I'm looking for that next challenge. I'm trying to grow. These folks recognize the opportunity of taking an already strong performer inside the organization and allowing them to grow into another role. Most companies or nonprofits or government agencies will be interested in this and provide some help. And then quite frankly, as a former recruiter, I can tell you, my favorite candidates were the ones who fell into my lap and were perfectly well qualified, because recruiters are expedient. We like efficient as well.
Right.
So if we don't have to go out, screen 100 resumes, do 24 telephone interviews, and bring 6 candidates into the workspace, if we have an internal employee with a strong track record demonstrating interest in a growth-oriented role, that's a slam dunk from an HR standpoint. So look at HR as your allies in this and build some connections there as well.
Outstanding. Yeah. So basically, after you've done steps 1 and 2, you need to let the HR folks know you're out there, right? And
absolutely,
that will enable them to do their job more quickly rather than bringing in the hundreds of candidates, which is a nightmare for everybody. These are thousands of candidates that they're going to get, right? So you will solve their problem. So I think that's great advice. I'm very excited about these 3 steps that you pointed out here, because some people, many listeners and students that are already working for good companies, they may have a track record of 10 or 20 years or something like that. So how do you leverage that and still move into the security field? So I think these steps are really outstanding and kind of give you a methodology for making that move. It's not going to happen overnight, right? You're not going to just pick up and say, okay, I'm switching into a new role in 2 months. But if you lay the groundwork that you talked about here, which could take some months for step 1, it could take some months for step 2, it could take some months for step 3, but of course you could always find the right opportunity in 1 month, but it might take some months. Would you agree? Or it's sort of a process. That's what I'm hearing. Yeah.
Sure. So the job search is a process, not a transaction.
Yeah.
It's important to recognize that you do have to put in a little bit of time on the front end to get those longer term dividends to pay off later on.
Right. So this is the internal job search, as opposed to the external job search that new graduates and many people think about. So, well, again, thank you very much for being on this show and sharing your thoughts, John. Really appreciate it. And listeners, whether you're students or others, thank you for watching and listening. And Next week, we'll have another expert talking about career opportunities in cybersecurity. Have a good afternoon, all.